Yeah, and when you own it, you don't have to worry about the chat GPTs or the bars or anything that. You're owning the media, you're owning the attention.
Neil, you work with some of the biggest brands across the globe. What are you telling brands that are heavily reliant on search right now? Because there's like a lot of, I think, fear among companies who SEO may be a moat, and they're looking at a lot of the people who are saying, wow, like this is really disruptive to search, like me and others, and saying like, wow, like do we even have a moat in this post-AI world? Like does search become much less powerful? Are you having those conversations, and kind of what are you telling those people?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different. So we're 5 years old. We're small compared to you guys. We're around 750 employees. I know HubSpot has a ton of employees. We're bootstrapped. We grew really quickly to 9 figures. It wasn't that hard because I also had a really big brand. And again, most of our customers are larger corporations. And when I'm saying larger corporations, I'm talking about like Adobe and Cisco and just like really large brands. And we do work with, if you look at Zapier and HubSpot, you guys are actually large companies, multi-billion-dollar companies. But I'm talking about like really large corporations where they're like, we have 100,000 employees and we don't even know what most employees do, right? That's the reality. Like if you're a manager at a really big company, there's no way you know what 100,000 people are doing. And not to talk crap, it's just the reality. When you look at most big companies, we don't have one client that says SEO is a moat or search is a moat when it comes to paid ads. All big companies, if you look at them, if you even look at like a HubSpot or a Zapier, your revenue, once you get to a certain size, it's not coming from one channel. It's coming from a mixture of all channels. And a lot of it, when we look at one similarity across all the companies we work with, a lot of the revenue comes from their brand. No joke. It doesn't matter if it's a boring B2B company, majority is coming from the brand. And we work with a lot of cool companies and most people haven't heard of them. Like one that we work with is called Fortive, right? They're a spinoff from Danaher. It's publicly traded. They're really large. Most people have not heard of them, but most people have used their products in their life. You just don't know what they are. Like if you went to a gas station, you've used one of their products, right? Like almost everyone has. And it's just their necessities in this world. But if you think about a lot of the revenue that these big companies generate, it's their brand. And outside of their brand, it's a massive long tail of, it's some search, SEO, some paid ads, some social media, Instagram and TikTok and email marketing and word of mouth and partnership programs. Like it's a combo of all. I haven't really seen any one large company, I'm talking about multi-billion-dollar company, where they're like, we make all our money from like Facebook ads or just Google ads or SEO. So most aren't really worried about a moat or search. It's omni-channel. What we've seen with the big brands is the moment you take an omni-channel approach and you embrace everything, we notice that the CPAs for all your channels go down by more than 10%.
Yeah, I think that's pretty true. Like when you get to a certain scale, you don't have one golden channel, you have multiple channels that actually equate to a certain part of your revenue. I guess because we're on tactics and you are, renowned for coming up with tactics across the web and different things. If you had to set a marketer down today and just say like, you're a best practice marketer, like you actually see the world in terms of like all this best practice advice, and let me like correct you in a couple of things. Here's some controversial things you probably have never thought about that work really well. What are some of those, like some of the more controversial things that if you were in a, marketing conference and you said it, you would get some certain reactions from marketers?
So one, I think software is a race to the bottom. A great way to market is just give away tools for free. HubSpot's been a big advocate of this for years. If you look at Dharmesh and what he did with, is it the website grader? Is that what it's called? Website grader?
Website grader, yeah.
The website grader is not a freemium tool. It's a free tool, and a portion of them, even if you get a lot of users, I get all of them won't be HubSpot users, but a small fraction of them can be HubSpot users. Email signature. Don't pay for email signature. It's free. Very, very small fraction of them, even though it's not the majority, can end up using your product. If you look at Zapier, for most companies, they don't need to pay for Zapier. You can do a lot of it for free, especially if you're a small business. The moment you get big enough, you don't care. Like you're already using it, you'll pay because you have a lot of hooks and you're making enough money where it's really worth it for you. Then you don't have to hire full-time developers, right? So that's one controversial thing. It's funny. I've talked to a lot of VCs. I was talking to Sequoia Capital, I don't know when this was, like a year and a half ago. And I was telling them, what's funny is like, if you look at MailChimp as a market, like the email segment, we were doing back of the napkin math on how many emails MailChimp sends out. They got bought out for, I think, $11 billion or somewhere around there. And I could get the same amount of emails sent out as them using third parties for around $5 million a year. It was something like that. It actually wasn't that expensive to send out the emails. The big cost is to acquire the customer. It's
Correct.
not
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
to run the emailing
Yeah.
system to send out emails. Yeah, you got to deal with spam and other things, but like the big cost is actually generating the customer. And I'm like, it would be cheaper to sell software for free or give it away for free and figure out a better way to make money. And I'll give you a great example of this. I think that'll resonate with everyone. If you look at Paychex, Paychex, I think, is a 40-ish, 50-ish billion-dollar company. I'm guessing on the market cap, but it's somewhere there. I can actually Google the stock right now. So Paychex stock. And Paychex is a payroll solution. So Paychex has a market cap of $39.43 billion of this recording. All right. You guys are all familiar with United Healthcare, I'm assuming? United Healthcare,
Yep, I am.
their stock is one of the biggest insurance companies. This is health insurance, is $485 billion. They're 10 times bigger. It doesn't cost that much to send out payroll and just send people money. There's ways to make this super, super efficient and really affordable. The cost per click for a lot of these payroll software words is like 60, 80, sometimes even over $100 a click. That's not for a customer, that's for a click. Give away the software for free, make your money to all the people that are using your software. Eventually they get big enough and say, hey, do you want health insurance? We offer it. Plug and play and make your commission there.
And you did something like that for your agency, right? You bought Ubersuggest. Do you want to give a little synopsis of how that went?
Yeah, so we bought Ubersuggest for 120. I probably put in maybe 3 million into the software to get it to a place where it can generate enough leads. We did the same with the tool called Answer the Public. We bought it for 8.6. We overpaid for it. At the time, it was doing maybe 100 grand in EBITDA.
We looked at that. Kieran and I thought about buying that a couple of different times.
Yeah. I didn't know you bought that, actually. Yeah, I didn't know you bought that.
Yeah, I didn't know you bought that. 8.6 is definitely more than I would have spent, dude.
It was expensive. So
it was expensive.
And, they were like, all these other companies are, and we were like, man, we couldn't get them down low enough into price point. And we were trying to buy them for, I think it was $6 million, somewhere around there, maybe 6. And because it wasn't fully burdened. When they're like, yeah, we're doing 100 grand a month of profit, I'm like, you have no employees and no expense other than servers. This is not a true 100 grand a month EBITDA business. So they're just like, we want 8.6. They're like, how about you give us 6 up front and then you give us the remainder over a year and a half or 2 years. It was something like that on payment plans. So we're like, all right, we still don't want to pay it, but we ended up changing some things with the business. The traffic grew 30, 40% really fast. And we changed some things with the business. We got the EBITDA to 200 grand a month really fast, fully burdened with employees and all that kind of stuff. So 2.4, we'll get it to 3 million a month. I mean, 3 million a year really quickly in EBITDA, but we didn't care about any of that. So when we were doing diligence on the business, we were looking at how many enterprise companies were using these tools. And you had a lot of big brands, a lot of Fortune 1000. When we were looking at Fortune 1000 companies, it was something like close to 70% of Fortune 1000 brands were using Answer the Public. All right.
Wow.
So the way we make money, forget the tool. Even if it didn't make 100 grand in EBITDA, we wouldn't care. We start calling up those customers and we're pitching them on services that are costing them not 1 million, but in the multi millions of dollars a year and closing deals. So when you look at it from that aspect, it has a big user base. We don't care about the revenue from SEO software or PR software. We're like land and expand. Some of the deals will only sign up with us for like 3, 4, 500 grand a year. But these will be Fortune 1000 companies that have 30, 40 divisions and a few 100,000 employees. And it's like land and expand. Oh, you're an insurance company. We got 1 division. Then we got 3 divisions because we did good work. And then we're at 7 divisions. And next thing you know, that customer is paying $5.5 million a year because we got them from using Answer the Public. And we only bought that company for 8.6. And if you look at a customer for us that's enterprise, they should last at least 5 years, right? Numbers are a little bit skewed because we're still young. We're only 5 years old. And a bad economy makes churn go up in marketing for pretty much any segment. But in theory, our CEO comes from Dentsu, which is one of the big ad agency holding companies. He's like, your enterprise client should last at least 7 years. So if you got someone from one of these software solutions paying you $5 million in the last 7 years, the EBITDA that we're making from that one deal more than paid for the whole acquisition.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And you made Answer the Public profitable, right? Like this is the magic trick. You took the risks to outlay the capital, right? For Answer the Public as a lead source, but you knew you could still basically make it break even or profitable as just a standalone thing. And most companies won't do either one of those. Most companies won't say, hey, I'm not going to take the risk. I'm going to go and rent some attention from Google and Facebook. I'm not actually going to go and actually buy or build any real assets. And that's what you did. And if you're watching the show, like that's what matters in today's world. You got to own shit. If you don't own shit, there's little like no leverage that exists there.
Yeah, and when you own shit, you don't have to worry about the ChatGPTs or the bars or anything that. You're owning the media. You're owning the attention.
Yeah. Neil, can I just go back to just to make sure I get the numbers right? Uber Suggest, you paid $120K and put in $3 million on that tool.
The data was really expensive and the server costs were really expensive. Then we started monetizing a little bit from a software standpoint. Our goal was never to generate a ton of money from software, but we try to keep enough of it free where we keep getting more and more leads year after year. And then what we do is we monetize enough of the software for it to be profitable, similar to Answer the Public. But those two tools, Uber Suggest alone accounts for more than 40% of our revenue. So if we look at our clients at our ad agency, more than 40% of them are Uber Suggest users. Answer the Public, when we were looking at acquiring it, was roughly 60% of the traffic. We've grown it. We've also grown Uber Suggest traffic. Answer the Public right now gets around 80% of the traffic that Uber Suggest gets. And Answer the Public, when we look at it from a revenue standpoint, it doesn't even make up 5% of our revenue, but it's going in the right direction. So we think over time, it'll have a massive impact. And when we look at, if we were in all the countries we needed to be, we think there's a really quick roadmap to getting to $500 million a year in revenue just from all the leads that we're generating. We just need to add the headcount and the region expansion. I think it'll be a struggle. It'll take a while for us to get to $1 billion without M&A and bolt-ons, but it's a bootstrap business, right? No investors, no board. It's a great lifestyle.
Yeah, not a bad life when you can build a big business without the investors and the board to yell at you. So okay, so those two tools are essentially like half the revenue for this agency, right? Like half the revenue are attributable to those two tools we just talked about. Where's the rest come from?
Word of mouth and good work.
Okay. Client upgrades and word of mouth and referrals.
So 40+% of our customers are Uber Suggest users, right? Forget the Uber Suggest software revenue. That's not really the revenue. The Answer the Public revenue, the software portion, not really much revenue for us. The real revenue comes from the services, right? Because when we were looking to raise money, that's why I had the calls with the Sequoia and stuff like that. We were struggling to get bank debt for AR. Because when you're dealing with some of these big customers, they're just like, yeah, we want you to flow $142 million in ad spend. And even when you're making millions a month in profit, you can't float $100 million in ad spend really easily.
No way. Not even for, and they want that on like 60, 90-day net terms too.
Yeah, some want 120. So then we started calling up the Sequoias and this stuff because we're like a new version of Pilot Accounting. They invested in Pilot. And then we had a call with Bezos Expedition, Melinda from there. She's like, you can just go to, at your size, you don't need venture capital anymore. You're highly profitable. You can just go to the banks and just go get them to float your AR. So then we switched to talking to VCs and be like, hey, let's just talk to the banks. And the bank's like, as long as it's a marquee account like a Microsoft or one of those, like, we'll float your AR on ad spend all day long because the risk of a Microsoft not paying, this isn't like a cool startup that just went public. You're talking about real EBITDA on a quarterly basis where you don't have to worry in a recession or not if they're not going to be able to pay their bills and their valuation isn't based on stock price. It's based on real EBITDA. And the banks would fund it. So at that point, we're like, oh, we don't need to raise any venture capital. But going back to the statement I was trying to make or the point I was trying to make, it used to be 40+% came from the software, the service portion. And I remember in our pitch decks, we actually use HubSpot example. If you look at the marketing industry, we thought it was backwards. We're like, HubSpot has majority of the market cap. If you look at your market cap at the time I was doing my presentations, it was like 15, 16 billion. And we're like, if you look at a market cap of Omnicom, it was the same market cap, but Omnicom was doing an EBITDA, what HubSpot had as revenue. And the reason the market caps were the same is Omnicom's an inefficient business. And what we were saying to investors was we can build, majority of the money spent in marketing was on services, not software. give away software for free or close to free, charge for services, and then go and use AI and tools to automate as much of the services as possible. You won't be able to automate everything. And then go have these services businesses be super efficient. And we started producing good results. And the good results ended up making it where if we look at around 71%, 72% the last few months of our business, it's actually coming from word of mouth. It's not even coming from SEO or software. And we believe if you fast forward, call it 3 to 5 years, almost all our revenue will come from word of mouth and none of the tools or anything like that.
Especially because of the kind of companies you sell into, like larger companies, it is such like word of mouth within that, you know, you get to a certain company size and they all just kind of recommend each other. I think that is a really incredible insight, which is, I've always thought of like buying software to help other software grow. Like that's typically, even when we looked at that, it was like, okay, well, how does that help our core platform grow? Whereas what you're doing is you're like buying incredible tools, but then wrapping services. Like the services thing is the actual thing you're going to monetize on. And I hadn't thought about that before, which is like freemium for services.
Yeah, but let me rephrase this. I would have done what a Zapier or HubSpot did. I'm too late to the game. Your business models are amazing. I wish I could have done it. Look at the market caps. The public markets will value them very high for a very long time. I don't think Zapier is public, but the private markets will value you high for a very long time. I'm late to that game. So I look at entrepreneurship as disruption. It's too hard to say, I'm going to go and create a freer version of HubSpot. It's already free enough. I'm going to go create a freer version of Zapier. It's free enough. It's too late. But there's these dinosaurs like WPP and Omnicom, and they're not doing like $1 billion, $2 billion in revenue. They're like, oh, we do 15, 18 like billion in revenue. Like these are massive markets, not from a market cap perspective. I'm talking about from a dollar perspective, like just pure business economics, massive revenue, massive EBITDA that needs disruption. And what we're like, majority of marketing dollars other than advertising is not actually spent on software. It's spent on services. It was what our realization was. And it was too hard to disrupt the software players. And we're like, let's disrupt these old school service providers. And what we ended up learning as we kept growing, the reason we grow through word of mouth is because it's really edge cases. Oh, we're like Mitsubishi. We're in Peru. We need a global ad agency that we can deal with in the US or Canada that speaks English, that has people down there, that's big enough where we don't have to worry about the laws and business ethics and practices, and they can just handle this one thing for us in those regions. And we're gotten to a point where that's where a lot of our revenue comes from. And then they do it in one market and they start doing it in more. And they're like, oh, Mitsubishi also owns this other brand and this division. And then it's land and expand.
I love it.
Classic enterprise land and expand. All right. We're running out of time. I got one last question, Kieran, unless you have anything else. You want me to go?
No, go for it. You go for it.
What we gotta give the people what is the most underrated part of marketing right now? What's the thing that like you feel like too many people are ignoring and they should be going harder?
Creatives. So I'm actually going to give you two things and they both kind of line.
Okay,
the first one is creatives. I know ChatGPT or OpenAI has tools that can now spin up images, and there's a few other ones that are working on spinning images and all that kind of stuff. But one of the biggest leverage points in marketing is creative. And I'm talking about creative from like your ad image to the landing page, how creative you're getting, like the Squatty Potty videos, which you guys have all seen, or the Harmon Brothers. Like that kind of stuff is really hard for AI to produce because it's like, what kind of crazy stuff can you just end up coming out that will just cause conversions to go up? Which brings me to my second point, A/B testing. Those are the two things that most people ignore and don't really focus on, but they provide massive leverage. Because if you look at ad costs, they're continually rising. I understand right now in a bad economy, sure, it's getting cheaper, but if you look historically, it keeps going up quarter over quarter. So the real winner is, how can you optimize for conversions? And whether that's copy, landing pages, but a lot has to do with creativity, not just in your ad creatives, but your copy and your scripts and how you're going to produce more things like Harmon Brothers, or get creative like in the B2B world, like what we did in marketing. Hey, don't charge for tools, buy tools, give them away for free. The HubSpots of the world and the Zapiers can't do this because at your guys' size, you can't go to the publicly traded market saying, hey, we're going to make HubSpot fully for free, be a service company and start a business over again, right?
No way.
It's how do you do things in a different way to make your marketing economics work?
I love creative, not just for visuals, but even just for the way you described it, which is how can you do something much more differentiated in how you grow your company? Like not like you were disrupting an archaic model by doing things that were much more in a typical like software go to market, like have freemium, like wrap a upmarket product around it, land and expand, and brought that to like an archaic market. So that's creativity in how you build your business. And so I think there's like the creative part of just like the visuals and the aesthetics and how you stand out in the internet. Then there's like the creativity you bring to how you think about problem solving. And people don't think about that. Like everyone just falls into the lazy, this is the way it's been solved in the past, so this is the way I'll solve it. And that is just a surefire way to do average work.
Totally.
First of all, couldn't agree with either one of you anymore. Also, remember, in the world of AI, I love AI. AI models give you more of what they know about, what has already existed in the world. And true creative that brings something brand new into the world that's never existed before is really how you stand out and how you're differentiated. So I'm totally in with you on the creative side of things. Neil, this has been awesome. I think we covered a bunch of ground. It was really fun having you here. And until next time, everyone, this has been Marketing Against the Grain.